Hello, friends and collectors. I'm Peter, and welcome to the workshop. Today, I'm very excited to discuss a brand new release by one of my favorite bands. This is Breach by 21 Pilots. I've got lots to say about this fantastic album. If you haven't listened to it yet, I really encourage you to, but we're going to get into that. We're also going to do an unboxing and see what's inside the package. So stay tuned and let's get going. So let's dive into Breach. This is the band's 8th studio album and the 5th one, importantly, in what I will call the Dema storyline. For anyone new, Dema is this fictional, oppressive, walled city where citizens are trapped. And it's a metaphor, right, for the mental prisons that we create for ourselves. 21 Pilots has always been all about the metaphors and about bringing out the experience of our mental selves into the world and what it means to interact with the world around us through that lens. So this album's been advertised as the culmination of 10 years of world building, possibly the moment of closure for the lore that the artists Tyler and Josh have been crafting for us and constructing all of this time. With that kind of weight on its shoulder, I mean, the question comes to mind, is Breach the breakthrough that we've been waiting for? So, to really answer that question, I guess let's step back a little bit, 10 years actually, and go back to the album that started this narrative off. So that would be Blurry Face. We start there on our journey and then move into Trench, which, you know, to be honest, is my personal favorite album of theirs to date. For sure. And then Scaly and Iced would be up next. Finally, Clancy, which only came out last year. And now we get Breach. So from early on, the themes were always intensely personal, right? We talk about loneliness, depression, insecurity, and pretty much the demons of our own mental health. Right? And that's always been a driving force behind these albums. But across, the last 10 years, the scope has definitely widened, right? So the band has always sprinkled in now little more bits to fuel the spectrum of the whole human condition. So we have also hope, right? And love and acceptance, and ultimately just kind of the complexity and complicated nature and reality of what it just means to exist. So many fans, including myself, are coming into this album kind of hoping for that ray of light, hoping that this album will deliver that happy ending from the decade-long narrative that they've been putting out. But if we've learned anything from 21 Pilots, is that they never give clean, clear answers or easy answers to anything. Everything is always coded in layers upon layers of just what it means to live. So instead, to me, Breach feels like the closing chapter that is saying that the struggle itself and the attempt to break free from our prisons, the ones that we build for ourselves, that is the victory. The metaphor of the walled city is critical, I think, here, definitely to the themes, at least what I got out of this album. The first track is called City Walls, and right up front, it confronts you with this image of the fortresses that we build for ourselves, whether it be that we construct these walls to safeguard ourselves or out of fear for the things that are possibly coming at us, right? But either way, when we wall ourselves in, we keep ourselves secluded and trapped. I think the title of the album itself, which is breach. It doesn't necessarily suggest a clean escape from that, right? It suggests more so the crack, the rupture in the wall, just enough to let the light pour in. It actually reminds me of something that J.R.R. Tolkien once said, and I'm definitely going to paraphrase this for the most part. But what he said is that really the purpose of fantasy or storytelling, or in this case, just art in general, is to break us out of the prisons of our own reality and to take as many souls as we possibly can take with us, right, as artists. And I think that's exactly what 21 Pilots is doing here with this concept. They're attempting the breach. They are inviting us to come with them, regardless of whether or not the walls will fall. Now, on the musical side of things, Breach is ambitious, right? And incredibly layered. I mean, the word texture comes to my mind when I'm listening to this album. We've just got all of these layers upon layers of vocals, interludes, instrumental choices that are taking place here. I mean, it definitely feels like the soundscape is vast here, but also very cohesive. I would almost say this is their most cohesive album to date. Probably, even though we've been talking about how this is the capstone at the end of this narrative, I would say this is probably one of the best entry points for anybody who's looking to get into the band. And I'd say each musical choice also really reinforces the themes of the album. So, for example, we've got these fragile lines on the piano that underline these moments of vulnerability, right? And we've got these swelling, synthesized crescendos that rise in moments of hope, sudden rushes, unexpected distortions and aggression in key moments that, kind of reinforce that idea of the breach itself, forcing our way out of that comfort zone. And then the whole album, I would say, is also very dynamic, and it's constantly shifting in tempo, in tone, in intensity. A moment of aggression will, kind of dissolve into reflection. It's this wrestling match that is happening within the walls, and by extension, it's happening within our own walls. And as a drummer myself, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the performance by Josh Dunn on the drums for this album. I mean, his drumming in Breach, I think, might be his peak drum performance for me. He's not just keeping time, obviously, right? I mean, he's part of the duo. This is as much his vision as it is for Tyler, right? And I think that he's really shaping the emotional direction of the songs through the drums. Sometimes it's really subtle, layered beneath the vocal lines and in support of them. And then at other times it's explosive, taking over and pushing the song to the next level where it needs to be. But it's always in service of the story, always in service of the delivery of the song. And it feels like he knows exactly when to step forward and when to hold back. And of course, the lyrics are just as central, right? So Tyler continues his trademark style, coded, symbolic, sometimes almost like mythic. And yet, even through all of the metaphors, his words are grounded and really have an emotional honesty to them that I think a lot of us relate to, which is why we love this so much. There's also callbacks scattered throughout here, right? So phrases, characters, motifs that are coming over and through from the prior albums to remind longtime fans of this part in the greater tapestry that they've created. But instead of like tying every thread, I guess, of that tapestry, to take the metaphor to the next level again, um, neatly, it's more ambiguous than that. And I think what this album is trying or seeming to say at least is that life isn't like clean or easy, and closure isn't perfect, and that's okay. The journey is still worth it. And what really strikes me about this is that it doesn't do that through cynicism. 21 Pilots have always acknowledged depression, isolation, and the weight of living inside of those walls. And this continues that pattern. But it insists also now that even the fractured, incomplete attempt itself to reach for connection, whether that be, connections to community, self acceptance, love, all of that is worth it. So, does Breach give us that happy ending that we've been looking for from the band? Not, I guess, in the traditional way that you would expect, is what I'm trying to say, right? What it gives us instead here is something far more human, or at least what I would say far more truthful to what it means to be human. This isn't your fairy tale ending escape from the walled city necessarily, but it is that crack in the armor, that imperfect sort of fracture in the wall that still lets in that hope. As a standalone album, I mean, I believe it's an experience that rewards both the longtime fans of us who have been waiting for this, but also brand new fans and listeners who are willing to take in all of the layers that it has to offer. And to be quite frank, I think it's their best album since Trench, at the very least. And I don't know, I'm really loving this one. I'd almost say that it might be their best album, period. Because honestly, with Breach, 21 Pilots don't give us necessarily just that happy ending closure. They do instead give us that invitation to keep on trying, to keep breaking through. I guess in that sense, it doesn't really feel like a conclusion. But again, in art, all of the greatest conclusions or endings are really just new beginnings. And I believe this is what we have here. All right, everybody. Let's now get into our unboxing. This is the standard retail red edition of the album. I picked this one up from Barnes & Noble. I know that they have a lot of different variants online that you can purchase, especially from the website or Amazon exclusive. I know even Target has an exclusive, but none of those are available until next week if they're not sold out. I did pre-order one from Amazon, but it's not supposed to get here for another 10 days or so. So I was pretty excited and I just wanted to get going. So I picked this one up at Barnes & Noble if you're just looking for a mostly standard edition. However, it is supposed to be on a red vinyl, which will match the artwork perfectly. The artwork is growing on me. It wasn't my favorite when I first saw the reveal, but as you can see, there is kind of this hint in the background of that blurry face character. And so the idea of the narrative that we talked about is still present here on the cover art, and it's growing on me. The hype sticker is big if you're into hype stickers. This yellow contrasting one here is pretty cool. So I'm going to hold on to this and possibly keep it for my own sleeves. So the back has the track list in a stylized font pattern. It's very that mythical font style fantasy that goes along with the narrative of necromancy, etc. If you listen to the song The Contract or any of these other ones, that kind of stylized fantasy is definitely present here in the fonts. I like that. Looks like this is a gatefold, so I will be opening that up now, and we'll see what we get inside. All right. Nice glossy finish on here. Let's open it up. There we go. Our two protagonists, our two artists here on the drums and vocals. Very stylized, just with the contrast of the spotlight on the image surrounded by darkness and the unknown, which is on point with the theme of the album. Cool. Let's pull out what looks to be our production page. And our track list. Nice photograph of the two of them. And here's our disc insert. Cool. Red and black. I like that with the hands. Here's some lore for us, right? So we've got Nico, Clancy. These are characters from the narrative, right, that they've written for us. All of these characters that represent our inner demons, as well as our heroes that help us through the process of that breach. I like it. And here's our red record insert. Very vibrant. I know that some of the editions are more toned to match up with the hues of the cover. This one is much more vibrant red, almost like a fire truck red, but looks great. All right then, well, let's sleeve this one up and get to our conclusion. All right, everybody, thank you for joining me today in my discussion and review of Breach by 21 Pilots. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I want to hear what you think. So please, in the comments, let me know what you think of Breach. Was it as good as you had hoped for? What's your take on the lore and where the story has concluded? Let's have a discussion about that. Again, thank you. Until next time, and keep on collecting.